This video is specifically for Dr. Jordan Peterson, but for whoever else may be watching. I am Charles C. Pang, and I am the man on YouTube claiming to be the second coming of Jesus, the Word of God. Mr. Peterson, I just want to start by just letting you know how grateful I am to be in a world where a man like yourself exists, who puts himself available for people like me to be able to find whenever we're struggling with a question, especially for me. Your lecture on just what this book is, not in a theological or religious sense, but just in a monumental collection of human achievement, human ideas. When I caught that video of that lecture, that really helped me transcend to the next level, where I just had a new look. I just was so humbled when I heard you say that, because it was just something I had never even thought of. And it was just amazing that I could have skipped over that. And so for that, just thank you for just putting that out there and just sharing that idea, because it really helped me get over the roadblock that I was at. And I can go into that in more detail if you'd like some other time. But so then I went back and just started, going through the Old Testament, and then thinking about the ideas and the concepts and just the difficulty it would be for humankind to A, come up with that idea, and then B, think out that idea into a full-formed concept, and then C, take that concept and introduce it into society, and then D, come up with the next, and just, let there be light. Okay, and then there's darkness, and then there's the seas, and then there's the mountains, and then, when I just heard these are the ideas, it's like, wow, this is essentially, it could be, just this is when everything got their name, and then if we also think about the idea of just what's the lesson in all of this. And so after I just went through that, it was April 2nd, 2021. I remember that day because on that day, on the 2nd, it was Good Friday, and I was researching what Good Friday was, and I don't know the best way to just kind of put it in psychological terms, but I was sent just some message. Something compelled me to go to Revelation and read through Revelation, and specifically it kept pointing to the number 7. I don't know why, but just little voice said, Revelations chapter 7. And so I just, I've always just kind of gone with my heart all my life. And so I did that. And when I got to Revelation chapter 7, started, after these things, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, and the wind should not blow on the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. I mean, right there, I had stopped on verse 2 when it said, then I saw another angel ascending from the east. And this is where my narcissistic, personality got checked. Like, oh my God. Like, here I am just wondering, like, am I going crazy? Like, I've been reading this book after your idea, and it was like being Bastion in the Never-Ending Story, like reading that book and just getting to that point where it's like, this oddly feels like it's speaking, like, it's always spoken to me, but now it was like speaking directly to me. And that's just the best analogy that I can compare it to. Just like that little boy reading that Never-Ending Story, and then just like this part where the princess and just all that in the court, like it was just like that where I was like, and then, yeah, that's when I heard the message, and I was just like, okay. And then it said, then I saw another angel ascending from the east, and I was like, come on. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. I've discussed that with a lot of pastors and stuff like that. And they're just, that doesn't mean, they completely skip over that. They just kind of discredit, or just, I just tell them like, hey, I don't know. What does this mean? And they're just like, that angel's not Asian, Charles, just because it's East. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know how that's an argument, but okay, nobody can answer that question. I'll just answer it myself. And the next day, on the Saturday before Easter, which was April 3rd, 2021, 4-3-2-1. And when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, it's 4-3-2-1. And then all of a sudden, this is where things just kind of get a little confusing, because it was definitely me. But now, like, that voice wasn't necessarily a voice, but it was like I could kind of feel it like coming into me. And I remember just like going on the 700 Club YouTube page for like their live recording of their Easter Sunday ceremonies, and reading the comments and then hearing just like the previews, and they were talking about this new world order, and I don't know, the body inside me was furious just hearing the way this message was being brought. And yeah, like I was going through all these things, just writing comments of just pure disappointment and disgust. And like I said, I mean, I'm like writing it and I'm like, yeah, I feel the same way. And then it's just like, whoa, we're not gonna like send it, are we? And it was just like, send it. And I was okay. I don't need the 700 Club like on my back, but I'm ready. I saw a Papa John's thing where, yeah, the owner, I can't remember, John, was being booted out of his board position because of some controversial phone conversation that was recorded where he supposedly said the N-word, but the N-word could have been anything, and he was just like, I know I'm right, and I know that I will be redeemed. And at that point, I was like, did he see that 700 Club comment that I put where Jesus, I'm here, I'm back, like, blah, blah, blah. And this is where, like, oh gosh, my narcissism is definitely tilting towards one way. I gotta, like, do something. But again, that weekend, I was just so consumed in this mind state. I was doing, like, payroll for my father's company, and it just kind of interfered with that. And they were, even when they saw me, they were just like, are you on drugs? And I was just like, I'm like high, like I'm like on something else. But my parents are just traditional Korean immigrants. They don't understand the way that I articulate what I'm feeling. And it's difficult for me because they always just assume it ends up being associated with drug use, which, yeah, I was like smoking pot, but it's like, this is not like being high on marijuana. Like, this was something else. But, I ended up just having to give up that job at that point. Like, I was just all over the place. I was like drafting out all these notes about like questions I had in my life, like why I've always felt like I'm part of something bigger. And I was like, well, if I'm part of this, that's pretty big, so I guess that explains that. But I mean, when I was on Facebook, I quit social media over a decade ago. Just because it was right when I came to the point where I was asking myself the question, like, I want to be able to prove for myself an infallible way to either prove or disprove to myself that God exists or that God doesn't exist. Now, before this, I've already just kind of adapted that God is the Father, the Creator, my parents. Honor thy father and thy mother. That's something that has been embedded from, my culture, from the early stages in life. Yeah. So that's not very hard for me. So when I was going through discipleship classes and I introduced an idea that Joshua, Jesus Christ, was speaking of Joseph every time he was speaking of the Father. He wasn't speaking of the Father in the sky. He was speaking of his direct Father. And of course, the leader just is like, no, I see what you're thinking, but that's not what this means. And I'm like, okay, tell me what it means. And he's like, oh, he's speaking of the All-Father. And I'm like, hey, Dad. Dad. Hello? Dad. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. The father was calling. So again, I went back through that idea. Okay, so if Jesus was talking about the Father, why do I think that? Well, A, because I know the history is that Joseph is the one who was the link to David. Like, without Joseph being this kid's dad, this kid wouldn't even be a contender to be, Christ. And so I look at that as just like Joseph is the important figure here. Joseph is the last of the lineage to God, that God, David. Am I not correct? But then I think of being Joseph, and now everybody's coming to me just saying, dude, like, you're the last. We went through Ancestry.com, and you were like the last one who can fulfill this prophecy. Like, do you have any kids? A son? And again, this is just comedic play, but it's just like, yo, I'm just a carpenter. I got a girl named Mary that I'm kind of seeing. We don't know what's going on. It's just like, let's look at it from that point. It's like, you have to have a kid with this Mary. Of course, that's not what it says. It says Mary already just is presented with this kid. Joseph and Mary are already together. And then a messenger comes down and tells Joseph, hey, this kid was born of virgin birth, so don't worry about that. This kid, you will name him this, you'll do this, like, he'll be born in Bethlehem. It's just like, we all empathize with the burden that would be for a child to know, like, hey, this is what you're expected to be. But then I think that 99% of the time, we definitely overlook the burden that puts on a father. Not God, the father, but the father that Joseph was. Okay, so now I am having this son, and I'm supposed to name him this. I don't want to name him that. And then I got to tell him that he's got to be the savior of the world. Like, that's the burden that, Joseph's just like, this is a big enough burden for me. Do I want to put that on my son? My stepson, my son. Because Joseph was a good man. I know he loved that boy. If that boy wasn't of his own flesh and blood, I know he loved that boy as it was his firstborn flesh and blood. So I don't need to doubt that, because I already know that's Joseph's character. And so then I picture myself. Here's this boy. And I just think about it because I saw my dad look at, like, my baby picture, my newborn baby picture. And he was drinking at the time, but I just saw him, like, hold that picture and just, like, go into this moment where he just, like, was in that moment. And he just, like, I saw him just, like, speak all the words that felt like he had spoken to me. Like, it was like a memory coming back, and he was just like, I promise, like, I won't let anybody hurt you. And just like, I was like, geez, Dad, like, calm down. Like, but again, I referenced that moment, and I thought about when I read that, just like, oh my gosh, like, this is my son, and he's going to be just overwhelming sense, like, a father should just be able to hold the baby and just, like, cherish that moment. But I feel like Joseph held that baby and just felt so much guilt about what he's going to have to possibly make this baby do or choose, so all that. Now, when did Joseph tell Joshua, like, hey, you're supposedly the Messiah? Don't let that get to your head. It's your choice. But that's who everybody thinks you are. Or that's what everybody wants you to be. Or that's what everybody needs you to be. So, I don't know. Joshua, I will teach you my skill, how to be a carpenter. I'll teach you everything I know, because that's what a father does. Teaches their son everything that they know. And then whatever happens, and then, he grows up. He's this little boy performing miracles. He's very well knowledged in scriptures, which I'm sure comes from Joseph and Mary. If he's the son, we got to teach him this scripture. It's just almost like a self-fulfilled prophecy. But again, it's all based on lineage. So I can't just introduce that. So here's all that from the Old Testament. A lot of Christians, I don't think, realize exactly that the New Testament didn't exist until Gutenberg, right? This didn't exist until the printing press was invented, which is far after all of these guys. So essentially Gutenberg to me collected all these writings and put it all into a printed version. That's awesome. And the fact that he chose this as the first book to be printed, and watching your lecture, why did he choose this? Because this is the original collection of every human idea and concept, and every creative piece of work is based on this book. So that was what other book would have been better than this one to put in mass production? So all these dots were just oh wow, always needed a probable cause, and now I got one. Again, thanks to that lecture that you just kind of clicked that connection. But then again, when I just thought of just putting myself in that position, when I reread that, and so the Father loved the world so much that he gave us his only begotten Son, I was oh, Joseph chose the world and essentially said, if this is what you want to do, go do it. Or that could mean, I need you to do this. I don't care if you just want to wander around and build stuff. I need you to do this. This is more important than anything else. And I've been in that position where my dad's just you gotta go be a doctor. And and I'm oh, fine, I'll go be a doctor. What do I need to do next? Go to college. So he sends me to college. I don't know where Jesus went in that missing part of his adolescence, but essentially I just connected to me. Okay, I'm going to go follow what my dad told me to do. And then just wander around until, Jesus was in his 30s. I just realized this in my 40s, where it's just you know what? It is my duty to do my Father's will. My Father just wants me to be able to take over everything that he's worked for, and not end up losing it all, but B, just continue doing good works with all the resources and knowledge and just financial security that I've always had. But then he wanted me to own a liquor store. It's always contradicting. But again, Joseph is dead at this point. Thank God I still have my father. But when Jesus comes back, Joseph's dead, and he just starts finding these disciples. And I just kind of came to a realization where what if these disciples were his brothers? That he hadn't seen in this time that he was gone. He comes back, he's hey, do you remember me, Peter? No, it's again, that's just theory at this point. But again, just as far as just what Joshua was doing, and then he came back, I think that when he came back, it was just kind of like me. Hey, I'm ready. I do realize this is a bigger deal. And just whatever revelations was coming through, I feel like I am the only one who could do this. And yes, I am on board, Father. I will do your bidding. So then he meets John, all this stuff happens, and he's just in that role. Now, none of this answered that question, like, how does this indefinitely prove that God exists? And then, I don't know where, I mean, this was like 10 years ago. Let's back up. At this point, I already found out that, like, there was a verse in here, John 4:16, where it just said, anybody who does not know God does not know love, because God is love. Right there, I was like, oh! Ultimate answer. And so I went on Facebook and I was like, this is crazy. Like, how has nobody just like told me this? Everybody's like, oh, it's like God is love. Anybody who doesn't know love doesn't know God. And so I just kind of did like a math formula where it was just, okay, if anybody who, if you don't know love, then you don't know God. You know, like you don't know. But anybody who knows love knows God. Like when I just kind of wrote it like that, it's like, okay, I definitely know love. Like my father, my parents have given me so much love compared to American parents. So I know that kind of love, the parental love. I've fallen in love so many times. And the odd part is, like, growing up, it was never hard for me to just say, I love you, especially to a girl. Like, right away, just, I love you. And for some reason, and it still bothers me today that, like, people are scared to hear that. People are scared to hear just a stranger just say, hey, I love you. And, like, totally mean it. And so, again, I'm not afraid of the romantic love. As I matured and stuff like that, I still do it. I'm like, hey, yeah, I love you. You know, I'll end up talking to a girl on the phone for the first time for hours. And then, you know, I'm like, yeah, I love you. And they're like, oh, isn't that kind of fast? And I'm like you said, you're a little weary about telling people like you believe in God because you don't know what they're talking about. I am not weary at all about telling people I love you because people need to hear that they're loved. And I hate it when it just it's like, look, I love you. I'm not in love with you, but I love you. Would you rather have me say like, I don't love you? So they're like, oh, you're right. And so like slowly I've like converted these girls that I've met and dated into like just being more comfortable hearing that word. Now, when we, you know, went separated and went our separate ways, I don't know how that carried over. But again, I've been able to just explain that just love is love. Accept it. Don't fear it. Because, you know, Jim Carrey ultimately, like all these people just say there's love and fear. We only act on love and fear. So, yeah, one of the last Facebook posts I put, well, okay, if you know love and anyone who knows love is God, and like I know love, I am love. Like I am the word love. Everybody talks about like, yeah, if you look up this word, you'll see, you know, my picture in the dictionary. If I had a goal, it would be like, if you look up the word love, it would have my face in the dictionary. Like that's the word I would coin. And so I just asked all my Facebook friends, like, would you agree that I am like love? And like, yeah, everybody was like, blah. And so by that, I just said, okay, so now that I got that sense, would it be wrong of me to write that like, okay, anyone who knows Charles is love. Anyone who knows love knows God. Doesn't that mean Charles and God are the same? You know, and I wrote it out like, you know, if God equals love, Charles equals love, then isn't Charles the same as God? Like that's essentially the proof that I set up on Facebook. And I sent it expecting like, oh, here come the comments. No real bad comments. I got a couple where somebody was like, well, I think God is Mother Nature. And I was like, cool. That's God. Like, I'm cool with that. And then I got a like, and just people were not immediately offended. They were my friends, and they just asked me, and then they came on board. And I was like, wow, that wasn't that hard. Then after that, I got my brothers like, oh, you can't just post that kind of crap, dude. Like, people are thinking you're crazy. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So long story short, just all the beef that I kept getting from my brother, and just like, I was like, this doesn't feel like love anymore to me. And I just like mocked up like this like suicide letter type thing where it's like, hey, thank you everybody for just like all the memories, and just I just want you to know, like, if I was never there for you, I'm sorry. But, you know, because of the two people in my life that I've always felt like I should be able to rely on, have just been on me, I just can't take this anymore. And so with that, I say goodbye, and I'm committing suicide. I put that, and I sent it. And I haven't been back on Facebook since. And I had one friend who did a wellness check on me, and like they were like, do you know what year it is? Do you know who the president is? Yeah. Okay, so why did you do this? And I told them, and they were like, we understand, but don't you think there's a better way to do it? And I was like, you don't understand. I've tried every way. I'm trying to get their attention. This has got their attention. I'm sorry, it worried a lot of other people. I had safety nets put in place where I told my friends, like, hey, if you see me do this, please let the rest of the Facebook community who's worrying about me, like, know, like, oh, he's not really gone. He's just done with Facebook. So I was like, I already had these safety nets put in place. Tell me who this person is who called. I will call them and let them know directly. And this is where it's just like, oh, we can't give you that information. It's like, who are you protecting? Like, you know, like what is this system? I would love to know who cares about me so much that they actually called somebody. So I was a little offended by that. But again, I just embodied that belief. I'm love, therefore I'm God. So I told people, do I believe in God? Oh, I am God. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm a Christian. That's very offensive to me. It's like, well, if you're a Christian, then you should know that you are also God, right? Like, And then I was like engaged to this girl, this Korean girl who was this traditional Christian, and I just told her like this revelation, like, she's like, yo, I think like Jesus was just kind of like this guy like me, just like expected to fulfill some kind of duty that his father put on him and all. And she was just put off about that. Long story short, she came in after I recommended a book called Conversations with God. And she was just like so offended. The first thing she comes into my house holding the book, she said, you need to burn this. And I was just, not the Bible, but the Conversations with God book. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, this is just blasphemy. And I was like, why? Because it's a man saying he's writing in the voice of God. And I'm like, what is this? We just got in this huge argument where she was just like, I thought that you were a good Christian man. I thought that's who I was marrying. And I was like, look, I'd never considered myself a Christian after just the prayer that I did that officially made me a Christian, I guess. I'll explain that again another time. But I told her, I promise you, like, I will always be a good man, but I will never be somebody who calls himself a Christian man anymore. Especially after she put me through these disciples. I'm a disciple of Christ, if anything. She said, that's not what I'm looking for. So that ended up breaking up an engagement to a woman who I thought I was about to spend the rest of my life with. That was very hard. And so I had a very vengeful look at this book, just like, how can this book just ruin so many things for me? You know, like, when I got my first kiss, she was a Jewish girl who said that she couldn't see me because I wasn't Jewish. It's just, it seemed like every time I find a love, this book gets in the way. And so I just dedicated myself to understanding what this book was about. And then again, like, I got to a point where I just kind of got stuck in my interpretations, and I came across your video, and then I moved forward, and yeah. After that Easter weekend this year, I just kind of would refer it to just like, oh my gosh, so like, am I supposed to do this? Like, and it was just hard. It was hard for me to just be like, I would love to do that, but like, I don't think my parents are going to be on board with that. And I owe it to my parents to do what they want me to do. So I was going through this struggle. I went through just this slump where all I was doing was playing these skills games, this platform called Skills that has like bingo, blackout bingo, and like pool payday. It's just gambling, playing stupid games. I was just like losing money. I'm like, you can see I'm like punching holes in my wall from just a bad night of losing. And just, I'm like running away from that responsibility and ultimately running away from the responsibility of my parents. So I'm just like coming down on myself. And then when I realized this, like, what am I doing? I'm like destroying everything that my parents gave me. I need to check myself. And I just like, in a desperate like cry, I just said like, what do you want me to do? Like, what can I do? And the universe answered. The next day I tried to go play the game and I was terminated by Skills for supposedly violating their terms and conditions, which I was like fighting, but then it was like a godsend because after I stopped playing that game, I was just on this creative streak. Creative. And yeah, along that creative streak, I was just like, I want to do something for the world in the way like Mr. Rogers did. You know, like I watched his speech to the Congress, like in 1960 something, when he was getting funds for PBS, and he just said, you know, like he's deeply concerned with the programs that are available on television for children to see, especially. You know, he was just so passionate about child development and just, you know, child behavior, which I never went to school for that because I don't know. I would love to have studied psychology, but my parents told me to be a doctor or an architect or whatever. Like, but the irony is, I would ditch my classes and sit in sociology and psychology lectures. So that was always just a passion for me, and I was always going down that, and just being diagnosed with, you know, bipolar, and I was just like, okay, I accept that. I don't need medication. I'll deal with that on my own. Narcissism, we're all narcissists. Yeah, when I feel like I'm pushed one way, I'll act out. So yes, I have narcissistic rage, but I'm trying to keep being able to be self-centering, not self-centered, but self-centering, you know? So, I don't know. In that sense, I credit that, you know, when all the kids in my school were just diagnosed with ADD, my parents were told I have ADD and I should be on, you know, Ritalin. And my parents like, no, we'll just get him in check. And I thank God for that, because I watched those friends grow up into the biggest opiate addicts of our time. Like, all the kids who were prescribed Adderall and Ritalin and all that stuff are the ones who are addicted to a lot of the pharmaceutical pills. You know, so I've lost a lot of friends down that route. I've lost a lot of friends through drug overdoses. I've just seen a lot of loss in this world. And it's just like, I've just cared. It's like a lot. I know you care too. But then I see that you are just in this position where you were questioning, like me. It's like, what would this person actually be like if this person came down? And I hadn't discredited the fact that, like, you know, like, what do I have to be this person? And so, in the video that I'm responding to in this, just when you said, like, what would that be like to do that connection? Like, I would love to be able to discuss my experience and just hear what somebody from your position has to say about that. And so if you have the time to maybe do something like that, please reach out to me. I don't know how to get in contact with you directly, but you can email me. My email is, I'll give you the easy one. Let's go with my last name, Pang, Pang, pang.c411 at gmail.com. Pang.c411. Pang, and then just the letter C for my initial. And I will be checking my inbox and hoping I hear back from you. I don't really expect to receive any kind of return response anytime in the near future, but you know, I can only hope. But again, whatever happens or doesn't happen, I'm just so grateful that you have all the videos that you have available on YouTube, all on the internet, for someone like me to still be able to connect with you. So for that, just no pressure on you. I hope that if you did watch this video, I don't know, please let me know what you think, because I don't want to think I'm crazy. I know people think I'm crazy. I don't want to think I'm crazy, but I would like to know what you think. So I hope this video finds you well, and out of anything, just remain blessed, and just know that I'm so humble for all your services, and I love you very much for just the man that you continue to show us you are. So thank you, Dr. Peterson. Thank you for everybody who was involved in making the video that I'm posting this response to. So God bless you all, and love each other and love yourselves.